Jazakallah khairan, alhamdulillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu, wa na'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana وزدنا علما وارزقنا فهم النبيين. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: قل هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون إنما يتذكر أولو الألباب. Says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his noble book that are they equal? Are they the same? Those who know and those who do not know. Can they be said to be the same? Can they be said to be on an equal maqam? And then he says that indeed only those who are of ulul albab, of the deepermost understanding, will truly remember. And this is an axiom of knowledge as far as the Muslim civilization understood, that knowledge is not the accumulation of knowing things. It is not the gathering of things. True knowledge is the remembrance of what we already know. And this is a remembrance of an a priori knowledge. And it is only those who have ulul albab who can truly understand this. And because he's talking about the lub, which is the seat of spiritual intellection, and it is deep set in the heart. The intellect is in the heart. Consciousness is in the heart. Consciousness is not a material phenomenon. It does not belong to the world of matter. It is not the brain. Intelligence is not the brain. The intellect is its own faculty, and the brain is an extension of its instruments. Just as the being has been given this body to serve as an instrument during his life or his existence in the course of this life. And so he's talking about the deepermost aspect of the intellect. And he says only those who have now reached that point will be able to truly remember this true knowledge, which is not a semantic knowledge. It is not a knowledge of the sciences. It is not a knowledge of, you read in a book or a theory of something, or like what they're trying to uncover right now, the theory of everything, or all these different theories in physics, for example, which they claim will unlock the secrets of our existence, like supersymmetry and string theory and all these things. It's not that kind of knowledge. Those are what you call particulate knowledges. And they are knowledges in their own aspect, but they are not the knowledge or knowledge in essence. The true knowledge that he's talking about is a knowledge of ma'rifah. It's not a knowledge of ilm. It's a knowledge of ma'rifah, of understanding who your creator is. And it is remembering a sacred covenant that was made by all of humanity with their creator when he asked, Alastu bi rabbikum, and each and every one of us testified in that accord, Bala shahidna. We affirm, it was an affirmative, that we affirm that indeed you are our Lord, and indeed we testify to that. It is that remembrance, and it is that remembrance that is unlocked in the deepermost part of true intellection, of spiritual intellection. And so in our tradition, knowledge has always been a sort of a unification, a sort of arriving at a divine unity from the particulars. And this is the thing that distinguishes the human being from all of creation, including the jinn. The thing that Iblis was most jealous of and most envious of, because he recognized the power that the human being was given. And it is the power of abstraction, of seeing the one in the many, of being able to grasp the concept of a thing. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, He taught Adam all the names And it is through the power of naming things that we abstract their realities and we understand them, right? So you understand, you know the word and you know what the word means. You know what knowledge means. You know what crisis means. But there are many kinds of crises. We're undergoing economical crisis. We're undergoing financial crisis. We're undergoing political crisis. There are many kinds of crises. But what is the crisis that is unifying all those particulate crises? It is the crisis of knowledge. Because we are in an age now, and Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that there will come a time when people will follow those who are, he described as ar-ruwaybida. And they asked, who are these ruwaybida? And he said they are those who indulge in trivial and frivolous matters, but then they decide the affairs of people. They are those who come up with all these trivialities. You see, now we have people who are in seats of power who have no knowledge whatsoever, who have no qualifications whatsoever to be in a position of power, to lead or to guide people or even to decide their affairs. It's a form of Gnosticism, right? Like they just know, we're enlightened. You see, they feel like we already know what is to be done. It doesn't matter what the facts say. It doesn't matter what the reality in the situation on the ground is. We know what is right for people and we make the decisions. You see? And this is where the root cause of that crisis comes in. Because the root cause of the crisis of knowledge is that knowledge in our age and time has now been defined by a purely hegemonic and materialistic society that it itself does not acknowledge the prime source of knowledge being divine. It is a civilization that does not acknowledge that divinity is the prime source of knowledge. And they are the ones who have now defined what knowledge is. And they are a kind of people to whom truth is a subjective entity. Your truth is yours and that one's truth is their truth and my truth is mine and that one and so on and so forth. Everybody has their own version of the truth. And the way society functions is that we come together and then we decide which truth we are going to follow. And then the majority will win on this, and this is called democracy. And somebody like Socrates said on that democracy is something that is bound for failure. He himself declared democracy to be a fallacy in and of itself because it gives equality to the unequal. And he argued on that matter and said, how can you equate the vote of an educated man to be equal to that of an uneducated man? And the Quran supersedes that in its knowledge. هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون? Are those who know equal to the same as those who don't know? Then how can the affairs of people be decided by a certain group of people on the pure merit that they are more than the fewer, that they are the majority? And this is Western civilization now, you see, and it has seeped into the Muslim Ummah over the past 2 or 3 centuries, owed mostly to colonialization and everything. They came in, they established their institutes, they put up their schools, they put up their governing systems and their schooling systems, and then they left. And they left people whose root culture and tradition directly contradicts all form of Western thought. Because Western thought itself does not have a root culture. Western civilization does not have a tradition. Everything is made up as they go along. Every new thing that comes up that is trending becomes the culture of the day. And then tomorrow a different culture will come in and then a different. They don't have a root culture. Unlike all these prior civilizations, the African empires and kingdoms, the Middle Eastern empires and kingdoms, the South Asian, Indian subcontinental, the Persian, the Chinese, all these, even the Rus, they all had deep traditions that go back thousands of years. It's something that the Western civilization cannot boast. And so everything is, as far as they're concerned, is fabricated. And then when they depart and they left everyone to sort of make their own way out. Okay, you want independence now, here, have your independence. And the stupidity of our own people is that they were very happy about it. They celebrate that same day till today. Whichever country you go to, Independence Day, Arambe, whatever, Jamhuri, whatever, you see, they still celebrate, ignorant to the fact that they're celebrating their own failures. Because if you do not learn to philosophize, someone else will philosophize for you. If you do not learn to think, somebody else will do the thinking for you. And this is the state of a majority of this part of the world, which includes a majority of the Muslim Ummah. We stopped thinking, and now the thinking was being done for us. And so those ideologies started seeping into our cultures, and they started dictating our way of life. Whichever form it might take, whether it is to do with economy or with governance or with education, whichever form it might take, each of those has got its own knowledge, and those knowledges are being dictated by a definition that is not of our own, does not come from our own scriptures. So we have become a civilization that anything that we do, we want to seek Western approval or recognition from that. And that includes all the ideologies that are propagated by the West, like LGBTQ. And if you do not do your things, if you don't do things in the approved manner, then there will be consequences. So like what's now going on in Tanzania and in Uganda and then recently in Ghana, when these leaders stand in opposition to those ideals, and then they start facing the consequences of it. You see? And they don't have a backbone to maintain that stance for a long time. It is chivalrous, it is brave, but how long are you going to stand against them? Until and unless you resolve the internal crisis, which is the crisis of knowledge. Because Western academics, like we Muslims especially, have become victims now of worldviews that are engendered by others. And we are the assailants of our own ailments. We've inflicted this upon ourselves because what we abandoned the Quranic worldview, or the worldview that the Quran presented. When the Quran came to enlighten a people from ignorance to enlightenment, to illumination. If you look, anyone who has studied the Quran at a deep level, especially with regards to the language, they will find that the Quran changed a lot of the words that were already dominant in the Arab civilization, that were at the peak of the Arabic language. Many of those words, their meanings, their definitions, their concepts were changed. And language defines thoughts, so when the meanings of words change, then the thoughts also change. And when the thoughts change, then how we project an understanding of reality, that also changes. And that projection, that worldview will determine how we cultivate our civilization. So when we remove the core, which is the language of the Quran and the language of Islam, and then there is a void, and that void is now filled with something that's fabricated out of human ideology, then that is how we project our worldview. And the evidence is clear for anybody who would want to argue that. If you go to any of these countries, you will see it in the architecture, you will see it in how the infrastructure is laid out, you will see it in how generally people dress, how they communicate with each other, how they interact. In many of these countries, for instance, in many of these countries where Muslims are the dominant population, it's already established that the weekend is Saturday and Sunday. It's a concept that cannot be removed from the understanding of many people, that that's a weekend. And that's the day, those are the days when we take time off from work and we chill and we relax and we go to the park and we go this and we go that and all that stuff. And then Monday to Friday is when we work. That's a concept that cannot be removed from the minds of many Muslims. I mean, I know in some countries in the Middle East, they have like they do Friday and Thursday or Friday and Saturday like that. But the concept itself, that Saturday and Sunday is a special day out, or two special days out of the week, that concept cannot be removed from the minds of many because it is already indoctrinated by a certain language, which is a language that has been has removed the meanings of divinity. those concepts that were brought in by the Quran have been removed. So you have just a shell, and most Muslims are just content with arguing things like fiqh and you know, when the moon is sighted and whether they saw it or they didn't see it, or whether today is the day of Eid or tomorrow is people are fasting, or what's going on. This is where we are sort of stuck and stirring in the pot, because it's all about the terminology that is applied. The terms that the Quran uses collectively project a certain worldview, but you go anywhere in the Muslim world now, and in any of the and in a majority of the universities, you will be studying, though you will be studying Islamic sciences, you will be following a curriculum that has got the same structure as Western academics. The same structure. They've got their modules and they've got their credits and they've got the subject system and, you know, the credit system and all that. Your transcript, your diploma, or it says on the diploma. I mean, now you've got, instead of people being called sheikh, they're called doctor. Doctor so and so, Doctor Hada wa Fulan. You see, it's all following a westernized system. And Western academics has presented a standard epistemology, which fundamentally is a flawed epistemology. Anyone who analyzes it correctly will see that it is flawed and that it contradicts directly with the epistemology that the Muslims held. Because it is an epistemology that looks for meanings in words rather than placing the meanings before the words. And because of the diversity of words in a language, words become a double-edged sword. In one aspect, they can help increase the more words you know, whether it's in a science or just in language in general, to have what you call general knowledge, right? The more words you know, yes, it gives you a broader understanding, but it also causes a lot of confusion in its vast quantity. When you now go into the deeper the particulates and the details and the semantics of it, it causes a lot of confusion in the understanding of the individual. Imam al-Ghazali says in his Mishkat al-Anwar, he says that knowledge is to understand the universality of a thing before arguing out the particulates of it. Before you start arguing out, is it like this, is like that, is to understand or to grasp the universality of it. What's known as tasawwur as-sadij, a naive perception, just to grasp it, the concept itself. And then you can go and start working out the particulates of it. And he says that the one to whom reality is unveiled, the one who really has an unveiling of reality, a true understanding of it, that person places the meanings first as primary and then places the words as secondary. In other words, if this is an object, this qalam, this pen is an object, to understand what a pen is, before then saying, oh, this is this kind of pen and that one is that kind of pen and that one is used for this other thing, those are now, you know, particulates. So you've got a fountain, you've got a biro, you've got a ballpoint, you've got all these are particulate words now. He says the one who has truly understood, has had an unveiling of reality, places the meanings first and then the words come secondary. But then for the one who is ignorant, this is reversed. They put the words first and then try to work out what the meanings are. And this is the person he's confused. And this is Western academia. Because everything about Western academics is a preference to the words and the invention of newer and newer words and terms. You see, thereby essentially complicating things and unable to distinguish between complication and sophistication, because you have something called a sophisticated argument. Like understanding the nature of God has got a simplistic understanding. Surah Al-Ikhlas is enough. But then there is a sophisticated understanding of that. There's a difference between sophistication and complication. You see? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Najm, in hiya illa asma'un sammaytumuha. These are just words that you have given to things. You just keep on inventing words. And if you look in the context of the ayah, he's talking about Allat, wal Manat, wal Uzza. But these are not the gods of today. The gods of today are not Lat and Uzza or Zeus or Minerva or whatever, Jupiter and all these. These are not the gods of today. The gods of today are ideological concepts. Feminism, capitalism, LGBTQ, political activism, industrialization, secularism, even conspiracy theories fall in that category. These are the components of worship now, because this is where people asphyxiate themselves. You see, they get hung up on these articulate arguments full of terms, and each new term comes up, they get excited. Each new term they get, you see, this what Ghazali says is that if you look at all these different words, they will bewilder you. You'll be amazed. Oh, look at this. No, this new thing has come up now. It's amazing. And he's talking about this 800-900 years ago. You see, the concept does not change in the reality of it. The concept is still valid because human nature is the same. We have not become a complicated or a sophisticated creature. We've actually become more stupider than we were before. So the concept still applies. In fact, it applies in a larger magnitude to us today. This is where people get all the excitement coming in now. There's something new that we need to tackle. You know, we have to defend the deen and we have to do this and that and the other. But they don't have the foundational understanding that really made them or made the Muslims who they were. One of the Orientalists said in his study of, because Orientalists are those who study the Eastern cultures from an external perspective. So he said about the Muslim civilization that this was a civilization whose sole purpose of existence was the pursuit, the preservation, and the transmission of knowledge. They had no other lead objective ahead of them. Everything else was a secondary matter. Now you've got a civilization that calls itself Ummah, for whom knowledge is like the bottom. If you want to make a list, it's the last item there. It starts with my home, my car, my marriage, my this, my business, my that one. I need to relax. I have to watch that film. I haven't watched it till today. Did you hear so and so said like this? Did you watch the game on Saturday? Did you hear so and so bought that team and that one went transferred to this one and this one like that? This is where the whole list, and then knowledge comes at the very end of it. And that definition of knowledge itself is based on a Western ideal. So Muslims will sooner pay thousands of dollars to go and get a degree in engineering or in medicine or in so and so, because they know that it will help them insofar as the economy is concerned. Somebody will hear about a 6-month course. Oh, okay, so the housing market is in flux. They'll pay thousands of dollars. I'm talking about in the West. I don't know how things are on your side over there. But they'll invest money like that. But nobody is going to invest money to go and take a dars or a proper course on any of the Islamic sciences. No, nobody is going to spend money to buy any of these Islamic books. Nobody is going to build that kind of library. You go to many Muslims' homes and you will find that 80% of whatever reading material they have, if at all they have now, and I doubt whether people have this anymore in their homes, but 80% of reading material is non-religious. It's not. 20% might be something that is intellectual, and of that a very small percentage would be maybe the Mus'haf and maybe say Bukhari or some other book written by Mufti so and so that they like. You see, that's what they will have in their home. They have got no grounding in, because they think that because they were born Muslim, it automatically qualifies them with the knowledge of the Muslims. That because they pray Salah, they know everything about Salah. Or they fast, so they know everything that is to do with fasting. And then part of that includes their own innovations. Half of the time they just make things up by themselves. And then where they get stuck, go and ask Imam or go and ask Mufti or go and ask so and so. There's maslaha here, please just tell me. And then he gives him fatwa and he's done. And Muslims think that this is now what knowledge entails. Or if there's a talk in the masjid, they will go and listen, and then they'll get bored half the time. And half the people will take out their phone and do whatever else. This is how we conduct ourselves. And if this is the state, then there is no hope for rising back to a civilization that was once praised by non-Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ said there will come a time when they will devour you like somebody devours a plate of food. And the Sahaba asked, is it because we are few in number? He said, no, bal antum kathirun. You will be many in number, but you're going to be like the foam, you know, like the scum of the water that's passing in torrents. You know, like when the water is at the beach, the water hits the rocks and then there's this whole foam that comes out of it. He's saying you're not even like the water, you're like those bubbles. And he said that because Allah is going to remove all of you from their hearts. They're no longer going to be inspired by you. And He's going to put in your hearts something He called al-wahan. And they asked, وَمَا al-wahan? He said, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا وَكَرَهِيَةُ الْمَوْتِ, which is fundamental, the human condition, the human weakness, the prime human weakness on a spiritual level, loving the world and despising the hereafter, because death leads you into the hereafter. And this is where the Muslims have ground themselves. Muslims do no longer delight when they learn something new. They no longer delight when they learn a new hadith or they learn an ayah of the Quran. They no longer delight, or they no longer have that drive or the passion to want to make the effort to learn, because acquiring knowledge is a difficult path. It's not easy. It requires commitment. It requires immense effort. It requires sacrifice. And if you can't make those, then you will never learn anything. You will only get the surface. You'll only skim over the top. There are many sciences that are requisite science. I mean, you've got Muslims now that they just go in and they pick whatever from wherever. Okay, they read a Sahih translation somewhere and then they pick that, and that is their fatwa now. You see, there are Muslims who say, they'll come in and they'll just take a hadith and say, if the hadith is Sahih, فَهُوَ madhabi. That's my madhab. If the hadith, they don't know how to work out the hadith itself, and they go in and they'll pick translations which are modified translations to suit certain political agendas. Imam al-Ghazali, I'll give you an example. Imam al-Ghazali, in his Mustasfa, in the introduction, he makes it a requisite. Now, the Mustasfa is a foundational book in Usul, for those who don't know. It's one of the first really comprehensive books in Usul, and it's been studied throughout. Even those who don't like Ghazali also end up studying the Mustasfa. In the Mustasfa, he makes a requisite in the introduction to say that you cannot study this subject if you haven't studied logic. He says logic is a foundation and a requisite knowledge of this science. And then he goes further to say that it's not only requisite to this kitab of the Mustasfa which he's introducing. He's saying it is a requisite of every science. And he goes further than that to say that the one who does not have this requisite knowledge, his knowledge cannot be trusted for authenticity. If someone has not studied logic, whatever they present, their knowledge cannot be studied, cannot be given any authenticity, or cannot be trusted for authenticity. Now, in the copy I have it in the back. In the copy I have, it's been published by one of these publishing houses from the Najd of Saudi Arabia. One of those prime propagators against Imam al-Ghazali and that school of thought in the sciences, for whom everything is haram. Logic haram, philosophy haram, hada haram, this one kafir, that one kafir. Everyone is kafir, kufr, haram, going to hell except us who are here and we follow the salaf. That's us, we are going to paradise. That's them. These are the people. They are the ones who've published the copy that I have. In there's a footnote that they have put there, and in the footnote they have said, oh, this is just an exaggeration, so it doesn't matter, you can do this, you can do usulul fiqh if you don't study logic, it's not a necessity. Well, you get all these muftis who come out from these universities start giving fatwas based on what? Based on opinions that were formulated 5 centuries ago, who do not have enough sense to think about the framework in which we are existent in our present time, who will not at all analyze the current situation in an eschatological framework, which they have to do, which the previous generations always did. Going back all the way to the Sahaba, they always analyzed things from different frameworks, and then they also analyzed it from an eschatological framework. to understand what action they're going to perform, how is it applicable, because that's what usul al-fiqh really does. Its objective is tahqiq al-manat, to try and understand the whyness or the spirit of the law. Why is that law applicable, and how is it applicable in that circumstance? You see, they put it into that framework. But when you now eliminate all these sciences and you don't even teach the people that, to say that this is haram, so and so said it's haram, that one said it's haram, this one said it's haram, Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said it's haram. Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah is not the Shaykh of the whole religion. He is Shaykhul Islam fi madhab al-Hanbali. He's Shaykhul Islam of the Hanabila. He's not Shaykhul Islam of the Hanafiya or the Shafi. He's not Shaykh of al-Islam of the whole Ummah. There are many denominations and there are many different schools of thought in the Ummah. And different scholars applied their sciences in different ways. And many of them changed their discipline because of a need. You see, a need would arise. Like Al-Baqalani, for example, he was a muhaddith and a jurist, but because of a need, he became a mutakallim. He studied ilm al-kalam, and he became one of the most formidable forces against all these external theological arguments that were coming in from the Christian world and the atheists, which were fewer at that time. But he became a formidable force against them. In one of the emperors of Rome invited him to Constantinople. This was before it was taken by the Muslims, and Constantinople became the capital of Rome when the Western Roman Empire fell. And he went there, and they tried to plot against him, because in their customs you have to bow before the king, and his bishops told him the Muslims don't do that, the emperor. Then he said no, you have to make him do it. So in the archway, the entrance, they added an extra sort of a low bar, so that when he came in he would have to bend down and go in. But look at the hikmah of the man. When he came and he saw the throne behind the archway, he understood what they were trying to do. So he turned around and then he bent down and he walked backwards inside. This is hikmah. This is application of intellect. And you've got people now who are saying no, this is haram. We don't do that. We don't, They asked him, and then when he came in, he started greeting all the bishops. And when he greeted them, he asked them all, how are your wives and your children? Now, in their tradition, which was a mix, Catholic, there was Orthodox as well, one of the stipulations of being a bishop is you're not allowed to marry and have children. So they told him, what kind of a question is that? You know that we're not supposed to. We have risen above. This is what they told him. We have risen above, having wives and having children. We are on a higher level. We are bishops. So he said, isn't it interesting that you call yourselves high above marriage and having children, and yet you say of God that He has taken a wife and He has taken a son? So you raise yourself in higher maqam than that, And they say they all went quiet. These are the kind of people who, when they study the science, then they have a grounding to stand against all these ideologies that come in and start attacking from every front. If you remove all these, then you have a vacancy, and that vacancy has to be filled. It will be filled with garbage. It will be filled with nonsense. And this is why we are running around blind, because and we can't have unity. You see, people are calling for things like Khilafah. Establish the Khilafah. All our problems will be solved. Establish the Khilafah. They forget one thing, that there is a difference between Khilafah and Deen. In the same way that there is a difference between unity and uniformity. The idea of uniformity comes from the West. So anyone who travels to the West now, especially like North America, even in Europe, everything just looks the same. The roads are the same, the traffic lights, the way everything is structured, the signs. If you go to many of the hotels, they all have the same bed and the same layout, the same furniture. That's uniformity. Wherever you go, you'll find anyone in any profession will have the same kind of attire, right? This is uniformity. It's not unity. Unity is where you have a common understanding regardless of whatever outward form is being presented. And Islam has never had uniformity. Islam has always been diverse. Diverse cultures from diverse backgrounds with diverse thoughts and ideas, but they all recognize a common concept that unifies them. That common concept was the knowledge that was shared among the people. Because without that, it will have to be filled with something else. So you go to any social gathering you go to, you will not find an exchange of knowledge. There's no وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. There's none of those, because those two entities are to do with knowledge. To share the truth and to share it with patience. Those two are to do with knowledge. But there's no such kind of discourse in any circle and any social gathering. People will either be gossiping about whatever else, entertainment or sports or something like that, or they'll be playing trivial games, or they'll be laughing at each other or exchanging jokes, And then many of these conversations will go towards very vulgar directions, especially among men. And I've had witness to some of these gatherings in the masajid. In masajids, I've seen these kinds of discussions. Idle talk that go towards things like sexuality, and start talking about my girlfriend this and my this one that, and I did like this and so on, those kinds of things. Because the truth is not there. You're no longer enjoining each other with the truth. So something else will take its place. You remove the glue that keeps society together, then society will fall apart. Doesn't matter what khilafah you establish. You might establish uniformity because you will impose law upon everyone, but you will not have unity. You will always have discord, because the knowledge itself has been removed from society. And we have done it to ourselves by removing it from our hearts. Imam Malik said, لَيْسَ الْعِلْمَ بِكَثْرَةِ الرِّوَايَاتِ بَلْ هُوَ نُورٌ قَذَفَهُ اللَّهُ فِي قَلْبِ الْمُؤْمِنِ. Knowledge is not the knowing of opinions and narrations and citations and all these things. You've got tons of people who think that if they quote from this book and from that book and from here and from there, and the Quran says this and the Hadith says that, they have knowledge. That's not knowledge. You've got ton of information, and this is where the Muslims themselves don't understand. They don't know that in the same way that there's a difference between unity and uniformity, there's a difference between particulate and universal. There's a difference between information and knowledge. Knowledge is universal. Information is widespread, it is particulate. And it's not about only knowing the difference between information, between knowing what information is and what knowledge is, but it's in being able to differentiate between the two that they cannot also do, because they don't know what they have with them. They think they have knowledge, but all they have is a ton of information. Rather, as Imam Malik said, knowledge is a light that Allah thrusts into the hearts of the believer, deep down into the loop, so that they become ulul albab, people of understanding, regardless of what the circumstances present themselves with. And the circumstances keep on changing, and the same issues keep on arising, and the same things we keep on disputing among ourselves is a clear sign that not only are we a diseased society, our disease is by our own doing, because we took away the shifa. We took away the cure for it. It is knowledge that cures the heart, because it is knowledge that gives an individual, in psychology, an individual's most agitated state is in a state of not knowing. The root of all psychological disorder is an epistemological crisis. It's a conflict between what reality is presenting and what the mind is concocting. In other words, the logic internally is not harmonious with the logic externally. And so a disorderly state is an illogical state. This is why people who have psychological distress, a lot of the things that they will exhibit are irrational or they're illogical. And once you start making them realize the logic of it, once you make them understand the soundness of it, those disorders get cured. So when they start having an understanding, the epistemological crisis gets resolved. But there is something as a true epistemology and a false epistemology. And many of the Muslims are running on a false epistemology. They have got no grounding in any sciences. They have got no understanding of what those sciences are. They think that science is about physics or chemistry. Or, okay, I have a degree in such and such field. My background, my profession, that's not sciences. Real sciences, what the ulama call ulum, are to do with fard kifaya, and then with fard ayn first and then fard kifaya. If you have not established fard ayn, then you going out to look for fard kifaya, which is like now I want to study medicine and so on, is futile, it's pointless. And those fard ayn have got requisite knowledges, language, grammar, logic, rhetoric, sciences that Ibn Taymiyyah said that understanding the Quran and Sunnah is wajib, and that makes the Arabic language wajib, because that which is wajib, its requisite also becomes wajib. If salah is wajib, then wudu is wajib, because you can't enter salah without wudu. In the same way, if you want to study the Quran and Sunnah, which is wajib, then learning the Arabic language is wajib. And language has got all these constituents, which when you start mastering them, people start having deeper and deeper comprehension. Their comprehension expands, their understanding expands. They are able to now sift through the particulars and see the one in the many, see the universality of it, instead of getting hung up on the particulars. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the human being into this world, which is a world of time. And He's given each individual a certain amount of time. But if you look on the general, like overall, there's an average duration of time, which is about maybe 60 to 80 years each person has, with the few anomalies exempt from that. Now, He says that I did not create man or jinn except but to serve me. And then if you expand on that, the service itself has to come from a point of knowledge. Because if you go back to the prime origin, He has sent a Khalifa, and He has given this Khalifa the ability to abstract and to understand. So He's given, why would you would ask the question then, why give an individual 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 80 years? If you can just go and finish university in 4 years, why not give each individual 4 years and they're done? And then they go back to their Lord. Why? Why give all that duration? Because time itself is a component of learning. And so far as consciousness is concerned, you cannot reverse that effect. See, the affirmative of the consciousness or the negative of the consciousness, to say yes or to say no, to accept or to reject, which is the firaq, right? It is the differentiation. Most people cannot differentiate in knowledge. They just take whatever. But the true intellect, which is of the ulul albab, the true intellect differentiates to sift out what is right and to remove what is wrong. That itself has got a forward progression. Each event, micro event in that has to take place, and then the next one, and then the next one. And then after that there is a contemplative period. So there's fikr, and then there's tafakkur, which is a sort of a reflection. So that itself has to take its time. Many of the mufassirun will say, if somebody is a true mufassir, if they really understand the science of tafsir, they will say that the best mufassir is time itself. Time itself is the best explainer of the Quran. let it unveil itself over time, and that's what it has been doing over time. You see, so time itself plays a role in unraveling or providing this unveiling, and this is where the sabr comes in, to be patient with knowledge. But people are in an age whereby I want to know right now. I want to know everything in this. That's why people will look for 5-minute videos on YouTube. Shortcut to learning Arabic language. They will find something that gives them 10 steps in which you can master Arabic language. They'll waste 5 minutes, 10 minutes of that, get nothing out of it. They're back to square one. They'll go out 2-3 days later, they'll look for another video. 2-3 days, they'll look for another video. Then they'll ask for tips. What's the best tip to learn Arabic? What's the best tip to learn this? Akhi, there is no tip. Just sit down and do the work. There's no shortcut. If there was a shortcut, our ulama would not spend 20-30 years mastering a science. You see, knowledge has its own due process and you have to allow it. So it's not just the truth aspect, it is also the sabr. You have to give it time and be patient with it, or be patient with your understanding, let it unfold by itself. A lot of people I've seen, especially in eschatology, now you mentioned Sheikh Imran, he's one of my teachers. I've seen many people do this. They'll watch a couple of his lectures and then they will regurgitate the exact same thing that he said without actually understanding what he's saying. So you'll see it in their statements. They'll use words like bogus monetary system. That word is his word. That's what he uses. But they'll use the same word. And that tells me that you haven't actually understood what he's saying. You're just regurgitating that. And you are regurgitating it because you liked what he said. It agreed with point something that was already internally within you. Either that, or you were a conspiracy theorist and then you heard Sheikh Imran say that it's like this, so now he's your favorite ustad. Or AbuBilaal says so and now he's your favorite guy. So they take those same words and they throw them back out again. You see, you've not understood what the scholar was saying. You've not understood you've not abstracted from that because you were impatient. And then when something else happens down the line, suddenly, I used to listen to him, now I don't listen to him anymore because he said like this and like that. See, a lot of people end up in that category. So they keep jumping from place to place. These are the people whom Sheikh Imran himself calls schoolboys because they're jumping. They're not sitting on rock solid foundations, which is, where is your knowledge? Where are your aqaid? What are your furu'? Do you even know why you do the things you do? What is the understanding of it? You're sitting on shifting sands, then, whichever way the wind blows, you will blow with it. For many of them, it's entertainment. It's entertainment. I've seen this a lot. Go to any masjid that puts out a sign, says outside on the door, this Jum'ah at 8 o'clock after Isha, lecture by so-and-so, signs of Yawmul Qiyamah. I guarantee you that masjid will be full. But put something out there insofar as maybe understanding the fara'id of salah. No one is going to show up. 5-6 people maybe, and most of them will be old. They'll be oldies. They'll probably just be there after salah doing their adhkar or Quran or something, and then they decide, okay, there's a talk, we'll listen. Yeah, you put something, because it's entertainment, it's enticing, it's beguiling, it's something new, it's something amazing, right? Because they see like in the movies and stuff, and they get all this vivid imagery, and then now they want to associate something of Islam with that, and it gives them a sort of an awe of it. But they don't understand anything about it. I've had many people who have done courses with me on the science of and first of all, you can know this from their language. Even scholars will fall in the same category. You will know this. You will be able to distinguish a true scholar from the language that they use. If you hear a scholar saying signs of day of judgment, that one does not know what he's talking about. He's just tape recorder. He's regurgitating everything, because you look in all of the hadith and the entire Quran, you will not find the phrase signs of day of judgment. There is no alamatu yawmul qiyamah. There is no. It is all alamatu sa'ah. They don't know the nature of the subject they're talking about. Or they will say Dajjal did this, Dajjal is like that, Dajjal like that. The Prophet said Dajjal. Dajjal is not a name. It is a title. It is Ad-Dajjal. If you want to transliterate it, it is the Dajjal. It is not a name, it's a title. If you don't even know that much, you shouldn't be talking on the subject. But scholars themselves, they don't know that. And this is how you determine them. You will know that they are not actually understood the subject. And then when you examine their lifestyle, it is the same lifestyle, if not worse. Because the moment you understand that there is a finality to this existence, it has to make a dramatic change within you. Because it makes you realize your mortality, that your time is coming to an end. You need to make changes. As Imam Al-Ghazali says, if you will not cultivate your akhirah now, when are you going to do it? In other words, think about this, you could die tomorrow. In other words, the Dajjal could come tomorrow. What have you done to prepare yourself? You look at their lives, it's the same lifestyle. There's no change in their lifestyle. But they'll talk about it. They have a lot of information. They will draw ayat. I've heard people quoting hadith left, right, and center that I myself have not seen or studied yet. And they'll be citing those hadiths left, right, and center, but it has not affected them per se. They're just regurgitators. The Prophet ﷺ, and this is an axiom in our tradition, it is a fundamental axiom that you will find every alim will quote this hadith. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are contingent on the intention. So what you manifest, وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. Everyone will manifest what they originally intended. If your intention was to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but then you do all these studies and bypass all the, you're doing kifaya but you're not doing the ayn. You bypass that, then your intention was flawed to begin with. There was a break in your intention. And people always are unable, again they're thinking in the English language, so they are not able to differentiate. There's a difference between the niyyah and the reasons of doing something. The niyyah of doing something, the intention of doing something, and then the reasons to do something. And in a majority of cases, the two are never synchronized. The intention is different from the reasons. And what they will have an intention to, but they will be manifesting it based on their reasons. Or the intention will be something else, but they'll justify it based on the reasons. So their intention was never to learn the Quran. It was never to come closer to Allah. Their intention was to figure out what others don't know. See, I figured it out. You see, people will come up with all these ridiculous conclusions ultimately. And if you've studied logic, you can easily deduce these things. You can see these patterns in them. You've got the initial premise, you've got the middle premise, and then you've got the conclusion from that. And majority of their conclusions will always be trying to make a prediction. They will be trying to pinpoint to say, okay, based on my study, 5 years from now, based on my study, this and that, this and that. And then they will look outside and say, you see, that happened over here, that happened over here, so I'm correct so far. That's why they will come up with all these ridiculous calculations and all these things. Now that's what they are manifesting, and that is contingent back on the original intention. You are learning knowledge for your own sake. Imam Al-Ghazali makes an interesting statement in his Muqid min al-Dalal. He said, تَعَلَمْتُ الْعِلْمَ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ فَأَبَى أَنْ يَكُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. I learned knowledge for other than Allah, but knowledge refused to be for other than Allah. In other words, what you are seeking, you are already down the wrong path. If you did not seek out knowledge for the sake of Allah, in other words, as the Prophet ﷺ said, فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. If you did not make it for that intention, then you did it for whatever else. فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ. You did it for anyone else, for whatever else. And this is where a lot of these people are. That's why the conspiracy theories are very appealing to them, because you're trying to study something whose nature is not entirely physical. If an object is entirely physical by its nature, then you can come to the final conclusion of it. However, you're dealing with entities here. When it comes to the signs of the hour, you're dealing with entities that have a metaphysical component, because they have not yet fully manifested. They are still in the unseen. They've not yet entered the world of the seen. So you're dealing with components that for the most part are metaphysical. And you cannot prove metaphysics with empirical proofs. So when you start making an inquiry into that, and you don't even have the requisite knowledges of investigating that, then you are bound for failure. And you're looking for truths in that. When you take all the information that is available to you, first of all, you need to be able to do the firaq. You need to be able to differentiate what is valid and what is invalid. And then how to do the categorization of each, the formatting of each. And then how to do what's known as coherency of truth, to try and see what are the linkages and then to connect the dots. And then to verify, and then the authenticity of it. All those steps, they tend to miss out all of that. And then they draw a conclusion which is always wrong. It's always wrong. Anyone who goes into eschatology that does not have requisite knowledges always ends up in the wrong conclusions. Because you're dealing with things that you can't even see yet. And you're putting a conclusion on that. How do you know? See, this is a foundational question in epistemology that many philosophers have tried to explain, and they simply cannot explain it. How do you know what you know? I know Dajjal is coming in 2020. Okay, how do you know that? You'll find many of these guys, they'll start sending you links of YouTube videos. Yeah, see, this one said like that. I send you a video link, and this one said like this and that. You know? Is that the basis of truth? The Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, is the one who is walking fallen flat on his face, or the one who is walking upright guided? Who is guided? The one who is flat on his face, or the one who is upright on the straight path? How do you know that you're on the truth? How do you know we're on the haqq? You have to ask that question to yourself. How do I know that this is true? If I make this statement to say that it's such and such, or oh, the earth is flat because the Quran says the ha. How did you start from there to reach that conclusion? Can you provide all the dominoes, all the pieces in place from that origin to this conclusion? Like on that subject, you know, all these people who make all these claims, I know they go into the Quran, they pull out from here and this ayah and that ayah and everything. First of all, you need to be able to prove your own credentials. Whenever you make a claim on any science, you need to be able to prove your own credentials. That does not necessitate that you have to show that I have a degree in that science, but you need to show at least that I have a working knowledge of it. In other words, if you're going to look at the Quran, you need to demonstrate your ability in the Arabic language, of which there are more than 36 different sciences in our tradition. Now there are only 13 that are taught. 36 different sciences in that tradition. You need to demonstrate a working understanding of all of those sciences. You need to be able to show how you are doing the etymology of a word, sarf, which is one of the most complicated sciences in the Arabic language. I have got Lisan al-Arab behind me, if you can see. This edition that I have is a 15-volume dictionary. It is just one of those dictionaries. There are so many dictionaries. How did you choose the definition that worked for you? How did you reach that pinpointed definition that worked for you? Because in Arabic, you've got words that have an array of meanings. How did you find the one that worked for you? And then you need to demonstrate whether or not you have a working knowledge of all the other requisite knowledges when it comes to speaking on the Quran, of which our ulama agreed that they are at a minimum of 12 different sciences. Tafsir is one of them, and then qira'at is another one of them, and then hadith, and then ahkam, and then fiqh, and then usul al-fiqh, and then usul al-din. And then you've got balagha, bayan, you've got naskh, you've got all those. You need to demonstrate a working knowledge of all of that. And then you need to demonstrate a working knowledge of the material sciences, because you're talking about observational phenomena. And then all of that, and there's much more that you will have to demonstrate, but then all of that you need to be able to compile in a logical, reasonable argument. And then you need to demonstrate coherency of truth. Now you find me even one scientifically published paper in all of human history. I'm not talking about just the last 100 years or whatever. Find me any one scientifically published paper from any civilization in all of human history that can articulate from that ayah up until the conclusion that the earth is flat. Even one scientifically academic paper that concludes by saying that the earth is flat. You've got no coherency of truth. You've got no foundation of truth. Your epistemology is non-existent. If you don't have an epistemology, how did you arrive at that conclusion? To then say that this is the haqq. You're claiming something to be true when it is not, and you are saying that on the word of Allah. Ittaqillah. At least have awe and fear Allah. This is not a book of science that you just go in and pick in a fact and then start disputing the theory. But this is where they want to jump over all that. They want to skip that they want to skip 1400 years of Islamic scholarship. We are talking about millions upon millions of scholars. All of them whitewashed. I know the haqq, I'm going straight to the Quran. From where? And this is just one theory. I've heard of so many ridiculous things that come out of this. All on what premise? On what premise? On the premise, this is their premise, all of them, and all their theories, their premise is always one. They are lying to us. That's their premise. They are lying to us. Who is they? Who is they? They can't answer that question. Ask them who is they. They'll tell you Illuminati, Freemason, NASA, the government, this one, that one. They are lying to us. They are giving us, they are trying to misguide us. Or they will say that the Dajjal is lying to us without being able to prove that. Prove the lie. You know, as a principle, if you say that so and so is lying, prove the lie. Prove the connection between what you think you're being taught and the source that it is coming from. If you cannot demonstrate that, then you yourself are lying. And you're lying to yourself and you're lying to everybody else. You want the crisis of knowledge? This is where we are now. They've got no grounding whatsoever in the Islamic sciences. Many of them can hardly recite the Quran properly. Incorrect tajweed. Tajweed is the easiest thing that you can learn. It's the first thing that you are taught. You are taught how to pronounce the harf. They can't even do that. They cannot recite the Quran. Forget the melody part of it. That's qira'ah. Just the tajweed of it, they don't know how to do that. What they know is how to look in the dictionary. And then they derive what is a translation. It's not a definition. They will look at the Arabic word. There's an explanation in the English language of what that word is, or the synonyms of those words. And then those synonyms have their own synonyms and their own meanings. And this is what Ghazali is saying. They look for meanings in words. For them, these are the ignorant ones. They are veiled. They are veiled because what they end up trying to now figure out is the cause to the effect. They are trying to fill in the cause. See, ultimately the intellect has to ask the question why. Okay, this is what it is, fine. This is how they are doing it. Okay, why are they doing it? They are lying. Okay, so we have established what they are doing. They are lying. How are they doing it? Yeah, see, they are doing it like this, and they are sending the photographs on the moon. They just took a picture somewhere and then they did like this. I don't know, the whole bunch of stuff that they come up with. Okay, that's how they're doing it. Fine. Why are they doing it? Why should they lie? To fill in that cause, they will look for something that links to that. Now, remember what I said. A lot of it, and majority of it, is metaphysical in nature. It's unseen. You cannot establish a cause between the seen and the unseen. The causal link does not exist. How do you show me the cause between your niyyah and the action that you perform? Show me the cause. If I have an intention right now, I'll make an intention right now, and then I will perform the action. Okay? My intention was to take a sip of water. Can I show you the link between that action and the intention? It doesn't exist because the intention is of a metaphysical nature, the action is of a physical nature. You're dealing with a subject where a majority of it is metaphysical, and you're trying to establish a cause between the two. You will not find it. It's not there. You cannot establish a cause, a material cause. So what are they going to do? They'll fill it in now with other conclusions, and those conclusions lead them astray. And by the way, when I'm saying all these things, I'm not speaking out of ignorance. I'm speaking out of experience. See, because I also went down similar paths. When I first started getting into the science of eschatology, it was not a science that was sort of codified. There's no set of rules. There were no guidelines to say do this and don't do that. It's something that even for myself, I'm trying to work on, that will help other people when they want to get into the science, to have some sort of a guideline as to what to do and how to approach the science itself. The science of eschatology, in other words. It was very easy to get caught up in different kinds of conspiracies, especially now. This is going back to like 9/11 and the events of that. When those started taking place, a lot of Muslims started waking up now. That there is now a tangible attack on the Muslim world. Why? Is there something in our tradition that signifies this? And a lot of these, because the inability to find that cause to the metaphysical ends up taking us into conspiracy theories to find and establish a cause. And I went down the wrong path. I know that. I went down the wrong path, and it was very tiring. It was very exhausting. It would put me in a state of depression. Until I say, there is a correct epistemology. Trace your footsteps back to that point where you found epistemological soundness. And for me, it was all those foundational sciences that I had studied prior. You see, I went back to that foundation. And it's not that I just, back to the foundation, now let me figure out a different way. No, I actually went back to the foundation. I took out all my books of Aqidah and I started studying those books again. I did Aqidah courses again. I did fiqh course, my fiqh classes, I did them again. It was easier the second time around, but I went through them again. Now examining them in a different perspective. And that is when I came to understand that knowledge is not something that once you've done the class, it ends there. And then you take the next class and the next class and so on. No, it's actually revisiting, because intelligence is not knowing a lot of things. It's questioning what you know. That's what intelligence is. To reach to the finality of it, of conviction that what you know is true and you believe it to be true. And that is the epistemological soundness. That's the point of soundness. Coming back to that point where there was certainty in understanding. Anytime an individual starts going off on a tangent, I mean, as a speaker, I can tell you, many speakers do this. Something will come up and they'll go off on a tangent off the topic, and then they try to find their way back on topic, right? That's human nature. We do that. We tend to go astray in many things. Bringing your focus back to the point where there was some certainty, so that you can or if you cannot find or discover something new, at the very least you can solidify the foundation you have. Because in epistemology you have foundationalism, you have coherentism, right? So the more layers you build on your foundation, the stronger it becomes, because that is the point of certainty. In fiqh, you've got in usul as well, you've got a principle of certainty. For example, if you are in salah and you forget whether you are on the third rakah or the fourth rakah, going back to the point of certainty, when were you most certain, is the position you take. If you are certain that you are on the third rakah, then you perform the fourth rakah. If you are certain that you finish the fourth rakah, then you conclude your salah. If you are doubtful, then you perform an extra rakah and then you do a sajda, right? But the point of certainty is what takes you onwards. So going back to the certain position is what will enable you to clarify any doubts you've got and then keep moving forward. Otherwise, the further you go, as they say, going down the rabbit hole, the deeper and deeper you dig, the more difficult it is to come back. And then you're lost. I don't know, people don't like doing studies, and they want shortcut in everything. They want 5-minute Islam. They want the kiosk Islam, the kiosk Islam where you just buy bread and milk and you're done. That's the kind of Islam they want. They want 5 minutes, they go quick, and then they're back. They don't want to put in the time and the effort. And they make up all kinds of excuses. I don't have time, I'm busy, I'm this. Brother, time is all you have. If you want to sit down and really think about what you have, as far as you are concerned, the only thing you have is time. Everything else is borrowed. You're going to leave it here. Time is the only thing you have, and it's all about how you use your time. Understanding your situation, understanding the world, the reality you live in, and then making the sacrifice, because you have to spend time to acquire knowledge, which means whatever else you are going to spend that time on has to be sacrificed. So you have to be prepared to make the sacrifice, put the commitment, and establish yourself, if not for your community, at the very least for yourself and for your family. Because if we as adults don't establish ourselves in this tradition of ours, which is a tradition of the pursuit, the preservation, and the transmission of knowledge, if we don't establish ourselves in that tradition, then our children will not follow that same example. And then it is just a compounded effect, generation after generation, until it becomes lost. This is how generations, entire cultures forget their own language. Entire cultures forget where they came from. They don't know their origins. They don't know their own tongue. You see? Some out of necessity, but some out of deliberation. And that's how people get lost. I mean, many of the slaves who were taken from North Africa and West Africa to the Americas, they forgot their language, they forgot their customs, they forgot their tradition. That was out of necessity. It was subjugated upon them. But then there are many people who leave, like they leave India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they leave all these countries and go to the West, and they completely forget who they are deliberately. They adapt an entire new culture with an entire new language, and they completely get immersed in that way of life. You don't want to become like that. You don't want to become like that. You want to close off the doors to all these external elements that are coming in. And then you want to prepare yourself and arm yourself with the tools, with the right knowledges to combat them. Because the problem with the Muslims is never logistical. We're not fighting a physical war. The physical war, when it comes to be fought, is only going to be a few days. Really, the Malhama is going to be a very short period of time, few days. In many military analysts' opinion, that war, which they call the World War III, is going to last 3, maybe 4 days, some say 6 days. It won't go further than that. So the physical war is only those few days. The real war is a spiritual and intellectual war. And you cannot go for jihad if you don't know how to use the sword. And your pen is a sword. There's the philosophical argument, the pen is mightier than the sword. Some say the sword is mightier than the pen. The real argument is that neither of them are mighty. Mighty is the one who understands when to ink the pen and when to draw the sword. And in that instance, the pen itself is the sword, and the sword itself is the pen. You're going to fight an intellectual war. You need to know how to fight the war. You need to arm yourself with the requisites. You need to know your armor. You need to know you need to know your weapons, you need to know your strategies, you need to know how you're going to formulate arguments, you need to know how you're going to understand them and how you're going to debate them, and ultimately how you're going to get the message across, because it's not about defeating the enemy, it's about helping the enemy see the truth and helping them come around to the truth. That's really what the end objective should be. And the pursuit of knowledge should be for the sake of Allah, not for any other aspect. Any other aspect, then that's what you're going for. Then don't come around and say, oh, Allah has not given me nur. Yeah, because you're never actually looking for nur. You are looking for some means that will get you some wealth or some recognition or something. Khairan. I think that's my part, unless you have any other question. Inshallah ta'ala. Subhanaka wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وارزقنا فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين وحكمة النبيين وعلم النبيين ونور النبيين وصبر النبيين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم افتح إلينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بفضل سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم.